This is Frank Konsella with the Crested Butte Home podcast, and I have a special guest this episode. Everyone has been asking me about her, so I invited her to be on the show. And we are going to talk about skiing 14ers, every single one of them. 14ers are 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado. And we're going to talk about mountain biking, all of the trails in the Gunnison and Crested Butte area. 750 plus miles is what we have here in the area. So we're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about the reason everyone's been asking me about her, my wife, Brittany Konsella, and she was in an automobile accident, a very freak one, about 7 weeks ago. And we talk about that injury, and we talk about recovery and how she's doing. So let's get to the interview with my amazing wife, Brittany Konsella. On the Crested Butte is Home podcast today, my guest is Brittany Konsella, and if the name sounds familiar, it's because she's my wife. So, Brittany, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are from and all of that.
I grew up in Ohio, and I'm really lucky that I had a rather adventurous dad who had me on skis at the age of 4, skiing down slopes that were made of sheer ice, but only maybe 275 vertical feet or something. So I was never scared of getting lost or anything, but, he really kind of instilled the passion for skiing into my brain. I moved out to Colorado when I was 17 years old to go to CU Boulder, and eventually made my way to Crested Butte.
And how did you get to Crested Butte?
Well, I met you. Frank and I met. It's kind of a weird story of how we met, but we basically met because I was looking for partners to ski all of Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks, and I discovered Frank, and he became one of my best ski partners, but he also became my boyfriend and now husband. But at the time, I lived on the Front Range. I lived in Lafayette, kind of outside of Boulder, and I didn't really want to stay in the Front Range. I knew I wanted to live closer to the mountains or in the mountains. You already lived here in this fantastic, beautiful town of Crested Butte, and I remember asking you one day early on in our relationship if you would ever move back to the Front Range, and you said basically, hell no. And I was okay with that because I didn't want to live there anymore. So I was totally fine moving here, and I moved here in 2009. Actually, 2008.
Well, let's back up a little bit on that. So you said that you wanted to ski all the 14,000-foot peaks, aka the 14ers. So why did you make skiing all the 14ers a goal of yours?
Ooh, that's interesting. When I went to CU Boulder, I also was skiing a lot. I competed in freestyle skiing. I was on the CU freestyle ski team there. In the winters, I would ski generally 5 days a week between training and competitions. And so skiing was really like a huge passion for me and was really a huge part of my life, even through college and beyond college. And once I was done freestyle skiing, once I was done competing, I did start coaching. And I coached at Winter Park for the Devo team there. But basically, I was kind of looking for other things to do with my own skiing. I needed other goals. When I was competing, I had lots of goals because they were already all competition based. But basically, I didn't have any goals other than to help other people with their skiing. And so I started backcountry skiing and quickly looked for some goals with that. And Chris Davenport, in the year 2006, he was skiing all of Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks. And I always wanted to hike all of those, but my knees, I kind of have crappy knees from all the skiing that I do. And I don't like to walk downhill. Up is fine. I'll walk uphill forever, but walking downhill just sucks for them. So I never got around to climbing all of Colorado's 14,000-foot peaks before because I didn't want to walk down them. And when I saw Chris Davenport skiing them, I was like, hey, maybe I could do that because skiing is a lot better than walking down a mountain. So I decided I should make that my goal.
So how much, this is the very first year that you were even backcountry skiing at all?
Yep.
And you decided that that was a goal, a reasonable goal, right off the bat.
I went big.
So how was that transition then from just, starting to learn how to ski at like Loveland Pass and Berthoud Pass and whatever to skiing big, scary peaks that are farther into the backcountry and things?
Well, I think I'd already gathered a little taste of that before I committed to it. I was a quick learner when it comes to backcountry skiing because I had the skiing part down. I didn't really have the backcountry safety stuff down, but I had some pretty good mentors who were willing to take me around and show me the ropes on some more difficult terrain. And so I think I kind of knew sort of what I was getting into by having skied some a little bit harder peaks around the Front Range area. One of the first big ones that I did was, even just the Dragon's Tail Couloir up in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Mm-hmm. So you did that like early on in your backcountry ski career too.
Yep.
So what are some of your favorite or most vivid memories of skiing the 14ers?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, the most vivid was probably Pyramid Peak because that was also my most favorite. And Pyramid Peak is, has a landry line on it, and it's over 4,000 vertical foot line that goes all the way down to the valley floor. And it's a little steep, a little scary, definitely kind of rolls over on you. And I don't know, people say, I've heard it quoted that it's like 60 degrees. Some people say it's only 50 degrees, but either way, you never hear people say that it's not steep at the top. But it's steep, it's committing, but it's like the kind of scary steep that is fun, whereas there's some other mountains that it's a scary steep that's not fun.
Right.
Or the climbing is not fun or whatever. But this one, was just particularly awesome because it's such a great steep line, and challenging, but not so challenging that you're overwhelmed.
How would you compare it to some of the skiing at Crested Butte Mountain Resort?
Ooh. I'd say skiing at Crested Butte got me ready for a peak like that. I think the main difference is that a lot of the stuff in Crested Butte, you can kind of see where you're going, but this one, it kind of rolls over, and so it feels kind of airy, and you can't always see like what's below you. You just have to trust that you're in the right place, and you're not going to drop off some cliff. So,
skiing all the 14ers, you and I, we started a website, 14erskiers.com, and that actually led to a book called Backcountry Skiing and Snowboard Routes Colorado. So what led to that book, and talk about that process of writing a book, becoming an author?
Well, we had the Mountaineers Books actually approached us to publish, to write this book. They were looking for authors to complete a series of books that they were trying to do for pretty much all the mountain states. And they had already published one for Oregon, and the Washington one was about to come out. But basically it was roughly 100 routes of backcountry ski and snowboarding that you do within these states. And they were kind of looking for a mixture of routes all over the entire state, and all varying kinds of ability and also different times of the season. And I think you and I were kind of at a point, we were like done with skiing the 14ers, and we were kind of looking for the next goal, or at least I was, because I'm really goal-oriented. And you and I were even like brainstorming possible goals. And then, right, just as we were doing that, these publishers came to us and offered us this opportunity. And I think we were both kind of like, yeah, we just need to take up this opportunity. This was meant for us. And we also knew that if we weren't going to be the authors, they would find somebody else who would do it. So, it wasn't a question of like, will this book be written? It was like, who was going to write this book? Right. And we just saw it as an opportunity.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So similar question as before. So what one of your favorite or most vivid memories of a ski route in that book?
Some of the things that surprised me the most were areas that I hadn't had the opportunity to explore much in the past. So you and I had skied so many stuff around 14ers. And so that got us to a lot of areas in the state, but we didn't get much to the northern parts of the state, up by Steamboat and Cameron Pass. And I'd say there's some really cool stuff off the Cameron Pass area, particularly Noku Crags. There's just it's like a valley or basin, I should say, of couloirs. You go around a corner, there's like 5 more couloirs you could ski. You go around another corner, there's like 5 more couloirs you can see. It's like this endless scape of couloirs. You could camp out there and ski a different couloir every day of the week and still have extra to ski later on. It's just kind of an incredible area. And I know that we only explored a tiny little bit of it, and there's like other areas, other little drainages that you can go up, and there's even more. So I was pleasantly surprised with that area and what it had to offer, and I'd never really known about it in the past.
Nice. I didn't get to go with you on that one either, so I guess I need to put that on the list.
We need to take you.
In the Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, I wanted to talk about recession. You're seeing that word a little bit in the media. We're not in a recession currently. A recession means that we have had 2 quarters of slowed gross domestic product. The last time that we had a recession, housing took a huge hit, as everybody knows, and I think some people are expecting that to happen again. But I would argue that that would be very unlikely. In fact, 3 of the last 5 recessions, housing prices have actually gone up. I don't think that this recession will be caused by housing. We still have a very tight supply, and we have a very tight lending market. So people are not just getting loans and buying houses without a good financial situation. So I think that for sellers, you will stop seeing those big increases in your home value, and for buyers, don't expect prices to take this huge drop and you're going to be able to buy something at a big discount. I just don't see that happening. My name is Frank Konsella, and please go to crestedbutterealestateagent.com/newsletters. Sign up for my newsletters, and I will also put that in the show notes, and let's get back to the interview. All right, well, let's move on to mountain biking because it is it's still summer, although it's starting to wane as we record this. But when did you get into mountain biking?
I really got into mountain biking when I first started at CU Boulder, which was a long time ago, and I'm going to date myself here, but it was about 1994. I remember I was sitting in calculus class looking at bike catalogs with one of my friends who used to work at a bike shop, and he was kind of teaching me everything that I needed to know at the time about bikes and the components and what kind of bike I should get. Should I get aluminum or chrome moly? Because those were the main options at the time. What kind of shock should I get, and what kind of components, Shimano, what type of Shimano, XT, LX. I don't think they had XTR back then, but I think I was looking at XT and LX components at that point in time.
So you've been mountain biking that whole time, and you raced for a while. But let's just skip on and say that last year you were the first person to finish Trailquest. So first off, what is Trailquest?
First off, don't undercut yourself because you were second. The only reason why I beat you was because I had more time. He's a hardworking real estate agent.
Well, thanks. That's true. I did want to be first, but that's okay.
So what was the question again?
The question was, the first question is, what is Trailquest?
Well, Trailquest was something that was designed by our local Crested Butte Gunnison Tourism Association. And basically, they kind of geographically created this boundary where there exists 750 miles of single track, or so they thought at the time. And it turns out now that they've kind of finalized the boundaries, it's actually probably closer to 800 miles of single track. But, it's kind of in Gunnison County and some of the nearby counties as well, but not the entire counties.
Okay, so basically they designed this thing called Trailquest, and so there were all these, like, you know, once you got to 100 miles, you got, like, some socks or whatever, and all that, and it's still going on. So what are some of the most memorable moments of Trailquest for you that you can remember?
Well, there's a lot of memorable moments, actually. I mean, it's a pretty hard challenge. It was really a challenge that was designed for people like us who like to explore weird places that, you know, normal people might not go. I think I was pleasantly surprised with the riding near the Fossil Ridge recreation area. There's some really cool rides that we enjoyed there. And it's not that far from us. I mean, it's really just outside of Gunnison. It's not that bad. And there's some really great alpine terrain that we didn't know about necessarily before. And some good descending on it too. So I think that was one of the highlights. But, you know, the Trailquest also took us over to the Paonia and Crawford area, and that was an area I've always wanted to explore in the past, but had never really been given a reason to do so. But you and I got to explore it on our bikes on some pretty, I don't know a better word to say, but some heinous trails, but they were like fun if you're in the right mindset.
Yeah.
If you don't mind dealing with cow poop everywhere and, like, maybe not being able to find the trail or reading a sign that says no more maintenance on this trail, but there isn't a trail anyway that we can even see.
We hadn't seen a trail for an hour at that point anyway.
But, you know, it's definitely not the kind of riding that's meant for everybody, but if you're into adventure and exploration, then it's a great challenge.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that one of the areas that you really got to know thanks to Trailquest was the Fossil Ridge area, and you really liked it there. Do you remember some other areas that you discovered, so to speak, because of Trailquest that you really liked?
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised with some of the riding out of the Needle Creek area. You and I did a loop, like right hand Razor Barrett. Is that what it was called? No, right hand.
Yeah,
is that right?
Exactly. Yep.
And then the other one had us. I can't remember all the trails that we ended up on, but we ended up descending on Dutchman Trail, which is pretty technical, loose descent. And if you hit it in the right conditions, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. There was like Long Branch was in that area. We really liked that one too. And
yep.
And how many people did we see on those rides?
Hardly anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, the Colorado Trail goes through that zone, and we would sometimes pass hikers when we were on the bits of the Colorado Trail.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember seeing any other mountain bikers ever in that zone.
Yeah.
And I don't think we even saw any other hikers on any of the other sections other than the Colorado Trail.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason I brought that up is because it's great that so many people have discovered trails like 401, and they're super fun. But for anyone who thinks that they can't get away from it all, it's not difficult. Would you agree with that?
100%. And even the same is true with Fossil Ridge. We saw a few more people up that way, a couple dirt bikers here and there, but even then, they were few and far between. I mean, we saw hardly anybody up there too.
And we definitely didn't see anyone outside of Crawford and Paonia on those trails either, did we?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yep. So
lots of cows though.
Yes, there were cows. So what do you consider a bigger accomplishment? Skiing all the 14ers or being the first person, male or female, to finish this Trailquest event?
I think skiing the 14ers was harder. Because there's just so many more things involved. You know, when you're planning to bike ride, you know, you're really just kind of looking at the weather and you're looking, hey, is it going to storm today or is it not? There's not a lot of other dangerous things that can happen out there per se. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that you couldn't have a biking accident, but you're not there. You don't have this added layer of trying to predict snow stability like you do when you're backcountry skiing. When we were working on backcountry skiing and skiing all of Colorado's 14ers, the avalanche forecasts weren't quite as good as they are now. Now they usually predict even a couple days ahead what they think the forecast is going to be. But like you and I would be predicting, like using the weather and our knowledge of avalanche forecasting to do that work ourselves. We're like, hey, 2 or 3 days out, how is it going to be? Is it going to be stable enough for us to be skiing this peak? And so that was a lot more challenging, just trying to navigate through that kind of forecasting. And then also when you're in avalanche terrain, you have to make sure that you are traveling in that terrain safely. Like you're not staring down at your phone looking at a map that tells you there's supposed to be a trail in front of you like you are on a bike. You know, this you're trying to be like, oh, there's a convexity there. You know, we need to be careful because that area could slide. There's just like all of these added challenges in navigation and forecasting that you don't have when you're on a bike.
Yeah. And not to mention, just to go into it further, that the whole ski the 14ers thing is really two sports. It's mountaineering and skiing.
Exactly. And I think one of the other things too is that we were really kind of on the cusp of some of that when we were skiing all the 14ers, and there was still a lot more unknown. Of course, there were a lot of unknowns with the trails that we encountered too on Trailquest, but somehow those seemed less daunting than throwing yourself on, you know, a peak that might cliff out, and we weren't really sure how it was going to all work out all the time. Right.
All right, well, let's switch subjects again, and we're going to go to July 6th, 2019, this year, and you suffered a freak accident, and it resulted in your being flight for life, and a week in the ICU, and 2 weeks in the hospital, and a broken neck, and a broken femur, and a occluded artery. So tell us about that.
And don't forget about the broken finger.
Yep, that's right. You have a broken pinky finger. We just found out a week ago.
Yep.
7 weeks later.
Yeah, so, you know, you don't normally think that the kinds of things that we're going to do, you know, with all the things that we do, that we would be involved in a freak accident like this. I always thought that if I got majorly hurt, it would be from biking or skiing, but this was sort of skiing related because we were headed to a trailhead outside of Fairplay to go ski something. I know it was July 6th, and people would be like, well, why weren't you riding your bike by then? But the answer is the skiing was still good. So we were going to go ski, and we were more or less at the trailhead, but we had some questions. We were in a discussion of what route we were going to take, and we wanted to look at a map. And so I parked the car. I was the one driving. I parked the car. I put it in park. At least I thought I put it in park. But when I went outside to go grab the map, which happened to be in the trunk, when I opened the trunk, the car started backing up on me. It basically started rolling over me. And, you know, so basically the car probably wasn't in park. It must have been in neutral. We were parked on a slight incline, and just the pressure of me lifting up on the trunk was enough to start it rolling back on me. So, you know, I remember little bits and snippets of being under the car. I remember the car tire rolling over my neck. And I remember being like thrashed around and turned over, and it was like all a very slow process, but it happened like a little bit more violently than I would have imagined for a slow moving car. But when it was all said and done, like, you know, I sat up and I had blood gushing from my head, and I looked down at my legs, and my femur was all like mangled. So I knew right away I broke my femur, even though I didn't feel it when I was under the car. I don't remember that part. But we knew right away that we needed to get some help. So we basically worked on getting me into the car. We knew we needed to get me into the back of the car, and there happened to be people there at the time who were able to help move me into the back of the car. And then you set off the SOS button on our Garmin InReach, which I was thankful that we had because we had no cell service. But you started driving down the bumpy road until we got to 911, and then you were able to call people, or to cell service, I should say. And then you were able to call 911. And then we continued driving down the dirt road, and an ambulance met us. And then I got into the ambulance, and then they took me to a helicopter. And that Flight for Life helicopter took me to the hospital in Denver. Yeah.
To St. Anthony's.
Yeah, to St. Anthony's Hospital.
Yeah. So what was it like when we met the ambulance? Do you remember that part of it?
I do. I remember being relieved because help was there. But at that moment, I also started to go into shock. And I knew it. Like, that was one of the reasons why I knew that we needed to get me mobilized pretty fast, because I knew the adrenaline was going to run out. I was going to start feeling more pain. And that I was eventually going to go into shock. And I did. And I started just shivering everywhere as they're cutting my clothes off, because they cut off my expensive ski pants and my brand new 4th of July t-shirt. And, but I can't blame them, because that's what they needed to do. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted anybody trying to take those things off with it, when I had a broken femur and a broken neck, to try to take a shirt off or something.
Of course, they didn't know you had a broken neck at that point. It may have been suspected, but the femur was obvious, I guess. Actually.
Yeah, the femur was obvious, but yeah, it was a possible spinal injury, possible broken neck. But I'm glad they didn't try to take those things off the normal way and just went ahead and cut them off.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I remember, they asked me a bunch of questions about, like, what day is it, and how did this happen, and were drugs and alcohol involved? And I looked at them and I said, it's 9 a.m, no. That sort of thing. But, mostly I was just relieved that help was there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what do you remember from the helicopter ride?
All right. I remember the whole thing. Like in the ambulance, both groups of paramedics were trying to put IVs in me, but I just my veins suck. And it's really hard to put an IV in me, especially if I'm under stress. So I got poked, I don't know, a dozen more times probably on the helicopter ride. But I also remember as soon as I got in the helicopter, they said that it was a 20-minute flight to St. Anthony's, and they put some earplugs in, and I couldn't talk to anybody after that. Because it was loud. It was very loud.
Right.
And it was also very small, like, quarters. Like, I had trouble being comfortable with my neck. I was in a lot of pain in my neck at the time. And, they kind of put me up against one of the nurses that was trying to help me. I was like right back, like basically my head was like touching his stomach. And then my leg also, because it was just such a short space, like I had trouble getting my leg comfortable because it had to be bent a little bit more than I would have liked it to, just to fit into that space. And I'm not a big person. I'm only 5'3". So, that just goes to show you, 2 nurses and me, on a backboard, it's really hard to fit into a helicopter.
Yeah. And then how about the hospital stay? What do you remember? What were the milestones and things that you remember from the 2 weeks in the hospital?
Well, the big milestones happened when I was in ICU, which was about a week. So when I arrived in the ER, I didn't have full feeling of both of my hands. So they knew that there was a spinal injury of some sort. They were trying to still work out how problematic it really was. And because of some other complications that I had, they didn't do surgery on me right away when I was admitted. But overnight, I got worse. I had more pain. In my left arm, I had just like a lot of nerve pain radiating down that arm. And because of that, they saw that obviously my spinal injury was getting worse, and they decided to do spinal surgery on me the next day. So the second day that I was there. And honestly, that was a milestone in and of itself, because after that, I was not in a lot of pain. Like, that got rid of the majority of my pain. By then, they already had set my femur, which they did in the ER, and they had put my leg in traction. So I couldn't, so I really wasn't in a lot of pain. Yeah, I was on pain medicine, but like, it still wasn't that much pain medicine, to be honest, because I had full control of the pain drip that I was on. And I wasn't using it that much. So once they had that first surgery, it was just so much better. Then the next day they decided to do the femur surgery. So they put a rod in my femur. And I was incredibly thankful, because I've known probably a dozen people to have broke their femurs in the past. And somehow I was able to put weight on it, after the rod was put in. So it was weight bearing as tolerated. And I guess it has to do with the kind of how the surgery worked, the placement of some of the screws, and then also that my fracture happened a lot higher up on the femur where the bone was a little thicker, and also just that the fracture was clean. So I was able to put weight on it right away, which means that I was able to start walking. And so that was a huge milestone. I'd been in the hospital a few days, only on IV fluids, and, woke up and I was like, hey, when can we get PT here so that I can start walking again? Because I want to start walking again. And so, yeah, I mean, I did have to kind of relearn how to walk, but that was amazing.
Yeah, it was. And then, then 2 weeks later you were out, and here we are 7-ish weeks later. So how have you been getting through all this?
With a lot of help from you.
Oh, thanks, I try.
Lucky or unlucky as it is, I am no stranger to recovery. I've had numerous knee surgeries, and some other minor surgeries too. So I'm used to what recovery is and what it looks like. Although this recovery is certainly more involved and probably more extensive. Just trying to get myself into a routine of doing physical therapy, whether I actually go to physical therapy or do my physical therapy at home. And every day just setting little goals for myself, whether it's around physical therapy or just around like daily chores. Like just this week, I am now 7 weeks post-incident, and I finally was able to start doing my own laundry. And that's kind of its own little milestone. So, just setting little goals all the time and looking forward to what's next. The analogy I like to use, because we're ski mountaineers, is you climb a huge mountain one step at a time.
Yeah.
And this is one giant, massive mountain that every day I take one more step.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just to continue on the thing, you set, you're a goal setter, like skiing all the 14ers and riding all the trails through Trailquest. So what are your recovery goals right now? My recovery goals are to return to what I was doing before. So I don't know how long that's going to take. But, I want to return to mountain biking at the same level that I was. I want to return to skiing at the same level that I was, both in bounds and out of bounds. And that's going to take some time. I don't think that that's going to happen this season. Even if I'm allowed to ski this year, which I think I will be, I don't expect myself to be skiing at the level that I was back in June or whatever. Yeah. I think it'll take a couple years to get back there. And I think the biking, with the surgery that I had with my spine, it was on the cervical spine. So that's, for those of you who don't know, that's basically your neck. And, with a neck injury, I predict, when you're biking, there's kind of a lot of pressure on your neck. You're kind of like hunched over on these bars and you're trying to look up at the same time. And that puts some serious strain on your neck. And I predict that biking is going to be a little bit painful at first. But I'm pretty confident that through, the course of a few years, I can get over that. Because I've done it in the past. I actually had 2 herniated discs in my lower back and had to take an entire season off from biking because it hurt too much. But I was able to come back and do something like Trailquest.
So, who knows?
Yeah.
I'm predicting over time that I'll be strong again.
I'm sure you will be, for sure, too. So, well, that's a crazy story, and thanks for sharing it with everybody. But let's wrap it up. And Crested Butte is home for you, so why do you choose to make Crested Butte your home?
Because I love the community here. Honestly, not only do I enjoy the recreation, but the people here are just the heart and soul of this place. And the incident that I just went through and the way that the community has rallied behind me has been just such an amazing feeling. Like, I feel loved from everybody.
Yeah.
And I can't say that if I lived anywhere else that would happen, but I'm walking down the street and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen, are you okay?
Yeah.
And just the constant barrage of messages and, texts and phone calls and everything, knowing that this community was just behind me. It's amazing. Big time.
Where can people learn more about you?
You can learn about me on our website, which we share, 14erskiers.com. It's 14erskiers.com. And yeah, we try to keep up we try to keep it updated.
Yeah. Yep. And we had the same thing, obviously Facebook and Instagram, same thing, 14er Skiers. You can look us up there. And where's our book available?
Our book is available, on our website. That's the best place to get it, because if you get it from our website, you can get it autographed by us. But we also support a lot of local bookstores and outdoor shops. So it has typically been sold at Neptune's, at Bankgate, at...
they have it down in town at Townie Books. CB Sports
Rumors
has it. Rock and Roll down in Gunnison has it. And I think we're missing a few, but those are some...
Rumors has it.
Townie and Rumors, yeah. So,
yeah.
Lots of places locally to get it as well. And, of course, Amazon or whatever, too. So, anything else I should have asked that you want to get off your chest?
I think you did pretty good.
All right, thanks. And last question, who else should I interview?
I think you should interview Susan Mull. Yeah. So she's, pro snowboarder. Well, prior pro snowboarder, I should say. And she's been on the ski patrol here. She's deep rooted in this community. And she's also owns Clearview Window Washing in town, which they do a good job at washing windows. And
she's also broken her femur.
She has.
So I could just have a whole, you could
interview
Mary Boddington that I already interviewed. She broke her femur. Who else has broken the femur on the
Mark Robbins.
Yeah, exactly.
You could interview all the dozen people that we know who've broken their femur.
Right.
Yep.
All right, sounds good. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Crested Butte is Home podcast with me, Brittany Konsella. I hope you enjoyed it. I did want to mention that near the end of this interview, we talked about the community of Crested Butte, how they've rallied behind Brittany, and it's something that a lot of the guests on my show have talked about as community, and it is definitely a real thing. Brittany and I were kind of tearing up a little bit as we thought about all the support that we've been given, and just want to say thanks to everybody, and Crested Butte is a special place, and our community is a special thing. So anyway, all the episodes of Crested Butte is Home can be found at crestedbutteshome.com or on your favorite podcast player. Please subscribe, and I will see you again in a couple of weeks.